conference room went silent as I slid the contract across the mahogany table. Natasha Prescott's face drained of color as her eyes landed on page 47, section 10A. Her perfectly manicured fingers trembled slightly, the first crack in her usual armor of confidence. "You're bluffing," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. I leaned back in my chair, watching the realization dawn on her face like a slow-moving storm cloud. The CTO beside her grabbed the document, his eyes scanning frantically. When he reached the clause I'd highlighted, he actually gasped. "The source reversion writer," I said calmly. "You should have read the fine print before you tried to cut me out." That morning, I'd walked into Pinnacle Technologies as a demoted engineer with a canceled commission check. I was walking out as the owner of the company's entire revenue stream for their flagship product. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The look on Natasha's face, that moment when she understood what she'd done, made every sleepless night of the past 3 months worth it. Some lessons cost money. This one was going to cost her everything. Welcome to the Payback Office channel, where workplace justice isn't just a fantasy, it's a carefully documented reality. If stories like these remind you that karma has impeccable timing, joining our community means you'll never miss when it strikes. We're building something special here, working our way to 7,000 subscribers who believe that integrity always finds a way. That button below? It's your front row seat to every moment when the underestimated become undeniable. My name is Zara Bennett. For the past 6 years, I held the position of Senior Systems Architect at Pinnacle Technologies, one of the mid-tier tech firms trying to make noise in the energy optimization sector. My story doesn't start in a garage or a dorm room. I grew up in Milwaukee, daughter of a union electrician and an elementary school teacher. They taught me 2 things that shaped everything. Work that matters is worth fighting for, and every person in a building, from the CEO to the janitor, deserves the same respect. That second lesson, that's what made me different at Pinnacle. While other architects treated the maintenance staff like furniture, I learned their names, asked about their families, listened when they mentioned inefficiencies in the building systems. That habit of seeing people would become my greatest weapon, though I didn't know it yet. But first, you need to understand how spectacularly Natasha Prescott underestimated me. 18 months before that conference room confrontation, I was riding high. My team had just completed the alpha testing phase for GridSync Pro, a revolutionary energy management system that could reduce commercial building power consumption by 37%. Not 36, not 38, 37%, a figure so precise and repeatable that it made industry veterans take notice. The technology wasn't just about saving electricity. GridSync Pro used adaptive learning algorithms to predict usage patterns, automatically negotiating with smart grid systems to buy power during off-peak hours and sell excess capacity back during surges. For a mid-sized office building, we were talking about savings that hit 6 figures annually. I developed the core architecture during what I called my vampire months, 18 months of arriving at Pinnacle at 6 p.m. and leaving at 4 a.m., sustained by terrible coffee and the kind of obsessive focus that probably wasn't healthy. My apartment became a place I showered. My cat, Rutherford, started leaving passive-aggressive hairballs in my shoes. The breakthrough came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I'd been stuck on the predictive algorithm, trying to account for the chaos variable, those unpredictable human behaviors that made buildings use power in weird, non-pattern ways. Cleaning crews running equipment at odd hours. Security guards brewing coffee at 3 a.m. The CEO who kept a space heater running in July. I was staring at failure data when Tommy Rodriguez, one of the night custodians, rolled his cart past my cube. We'd chatted before, he was putting 2 kids through college on a custodian's salary, and I respected the dedication that took. "Still here, Zara?" he asked. "You're gonna turn into a ghost if you keep these hours." "Just trying to teach a computer to predict chaos," I said, rubbing my eyes. He laughed. "Good luck with that. I've been cleaning this building for 12 years, and people still surprise me. Like how the third-floor team always orders pizza at exactly 4:30 p.m. on Thursdays, then runs every microwave at once. Blows the same circuit every single time." I froze. "Every Thursday, exactly 4:30? Like clockwork, you could set your watch by it." That conversation cracked the problem wide open. Humans weren't chaotic, they were predictable in unexpected ways. They created micro-patterns within the chaos. I just needed to zoom in closer, track behavioral patterns at a granular level rather than trying to smooth them into averages. 3 weeks later, GridSync Pro hit that 37% efficiency rate. 6 weeks after that, the pilot program in Pinnacle's own headquarters had reduced our power bills by $42,000 in a single month. That's when Natasha Prescott noticed my work. Natasha joined Pinnacle as Chief Technology Officer 8 months into GridSync Pro's development. She came from Hexagon Dynamics, one of the industry giants, with a reputation for turning struggling tech divisions into profit centers. The company newsletter featured a glossy photo of her shaking hands with our CEO, Walter Hutchinson. She wore a white power suit that probably cost more than my car payment. Her first company-wide email arrived at 7 a.m. on a Monday, subject line, "Excellence through accountability." The email outlined her vision. Pinnacle would become an industry leader within 3 years through aggressive innovation deployment and performance-optimized personnel management. 2 phrases that sounded impressive but meant absolutely nothing concrete. I should have recognized the warning signs. Corporate speak, that vague, usually masked a lack of actual technical knowledge. Our first interaction came 2 days later. Natasha scheduled one-on-one meetings with all department heads and senior project leads. My slot was Thursday at 2 p.m. Her office occupied the northwest corner of the executive floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that matched her suit in both color and expense level. She sat behind a glass desk so clean it looked untouched by human hands. No coffee rings, no scattered papers, just a laptop, a leather portfolio, and a crystal paperweight that probably cost more than my entire desk setup. "Zara Bennett," she said, not standing, not offering to shake hands. "The GridSync Pro architect. I've been reading your progress reports." "Thank you for taking the time," I said, settling into the chair across from her. The seat sat noticeably lower than hers, a psychological power play I recognized from management theory books. "The efficiency numbers are impressive," she continued, eyes on her laptop screen rather than on me. "Though I notice the development timeline has extended beyond initial projections by 14 months. Innovation rarely follows a straight timeline," I replied. "The original projections were optimistic. The current system exceeds the original performance targets by 18%. Deadlines exist for a reason, Miss Bennett. Market windows don't wait for perfection." Her gaze finally lifted from the screen. "In my experience, extended timelines usually indicate either scope creep or inefficient project management." I felt my jaw tighten but kept my voice level. "With respect, this project required solving problems that didn't have existing solutions. That takes time." "Everything has existing solutions," Natasha said. "It's simply a matter of knowing where to look. I've built a career on accelerating development cycles by leveraging established methodologies." Translation: she took other people's innovations and pushed them to market faster. There was value in that skill set, certainly, but it wasn't the same as creating something new from nothing. Over the next 3 months, Natasha inserted herself into GridSync Pro's development pipeline like a splinter working deeper into skin. Every design decision required her approval. Every code review had to cross her desk. She hired 2 external consultants, Adrian Voss and Kelly Hartman, who'd worked with her at Hexagon, ostensibly to accelerate the path to market. Adrian was competent enough, a systems integration specialist who understood the theory behind our work. Kelly was different. She had a talent for presenting other people's ideas as collaborative insights, always managing to position herself at the center of every breakthrough. During a team meeting in June, I presented the final architecture for GridSync Pro's Neural Learning Core, the component that made the whole system work. It was elegant, efficient, and represented 9 months of brutal problem-solving. Kelly interrupted my presentation 3 slides in. "If I could jump in here, I think what Zara's trying to explain is essentially a modified Hebbian learning model with stochastic gradient descent optimization." That wasn't what I was explaining at all. She just slapped academic terminology onto something far more nuanced. "Actually," I said carefully, "the learning model is proprietary. It shares some theoretical foundations with Hebbian networks, but the architecture is fundamentally different because... Right, Kelly waved dismissively. The implementation details differ, but the conceptual framework is established methodology. Nothing revolutionary, but solid execution. Natasha nodded approvingly from the head of the table. Exactly the kind of practical assessment I brought Kelly in to provide. Grounded innovation, not reinventing the wheel. I bit back my response. Fighting in that moment would make me look defensive. But Kelly had just reduced 18 months of original research to solid execution of existing concepts. And Natasha had accepted that characterization without question. After the meeting, my lead developer, James Thornton, caught up with me in the hallway. "That was some grade A bulldust," he muttered. "She just completely misrepresented your work." "Noted," I said, "but we document everything. The Git commits, the design documents, they all have timestamps and authors. The truth is in the record." James gave me a worried look. "You're assuming people check the records. In my experience, they believe whoever tells the best story." He was right to worry. I just didn't realize how right until 3 weeks later. The email arrived on a Wednesday morning, marked high priority. GridSync Pro patent filing review required. I opened the attachment, a provisional patent application for adaptive energy management system with predictive learning capabilities. My name appeared in the inventors list, along with Kelly Hartman, Adrian Voss, and Natasha Prescott. The problem? Natasha and her consultants had contributed nothing to the core technology. Adrian had helped with integration protocols, sure, but Kelly and Natasha had zero claim to invention credit. Adding names to a patent when those people hadn't contributed to the invention wasn't just unethical, it was potentially fraudulent. I forwarded the document to James with a single line. "Did you get this?" His reply came in 30 seconds. "Yeah, what the hell?" I walked directly to Natasha's office. Her assistant, Monica, tried to intercept me. "She's in a meeting." "This can't wait," I said, probably more sharply than Monica deserved. I knocked once and opened the door. Natasha sat alone, reading something on her tablet. "I don't recall scheduling a meeting, Miss Bennett." "The patent application. My name is listed alongside people who didn't contribute to the invention. That's not accurate." She set down the tablet with deliberate slowness. "Patent attribution is complex. It includes not just technical development but strategic direction, resource allocation, and implementation guidance. All roles my team and I provided. Strategic direction doesn't make someone an inventor. The Patent Act is specific about this. Inventors are the people who contributed to the conception of the claimed invention. Kelly Hartman didn't contribute to the conception. Neither did you." Natasha's expression hardened. "I'm going to give you some advice, Zara. You're a talented engineer, but you're showing a remarkable lack of political intelligence. This patent will be filed with all 4 names. That decision has been made at the executive level. Then the executive level is making a legal mistake. I'm not signing off on this." "Your signature isn't required," she said coolly. "As CTO, I have authority over all technical intellectual property. Consider this a courtesy notification, not a request for permission." I left her office shaking, not with fear, but with rage. Back at my desk, I did what I should have done from the beginning. I called our legal department. Elizabeth Morno, Pinnacle's in-house patent attorney, listened to my explanation with increasingly concerned silence. "Send me the application," she finally said. "Don't talk to anyone else about this yet. If what you're telling me is accurate, this could expose the company to serious liability." I sent the document and waited. Elizabeth called back 3 hours later. "We have a problem," she said. "The application was filed yesterday. Natasha submitted it directly through an external firm, not through my office. Can you pull it back?" "I'm trying." "But Zara, there's something else you should know. There's a commission structure attached to GridSync Pro's commercial deployment. As listed patent holders, Natasha and the consultants would be entitled to percentage points on revenue." The picture snapped into focus. This wasn't about recognition or ego. Natasha was engineering a financial claim to my work. Elizabeth fought the patent application for 6 weeks. During that time, Natasha's attitude toward me shifted from dismissive to actively hostile. She removed me from executive briefings about GridSync Pro. My access to certain project files mysteriously disappeared. In meetings, she'd talk over me or redirect questions I asked to Kelly. The team noticed. James started documenting everything in writing, copying me on emails that spelled out my contributions in explicit detail. Others followed his lead, creating a paper trail that clearly showed who'd built what. Then came the Friday afternoon meeting. 3 p.m., mandatory attendance for all GridSync Pro team members. Natasha stood at the front of the conference room, Walter Hutchinson beside her. "I want to thank everyone for their hard work on GridSync Pro," Natasha began. "We're entering the commercial deployment phase, and that requires a shift in project structure. Effective immediately, Kelly Hartman will assume the role of lead architect. Zara Bennett will transition to a senior developer position, supporting Kelly's strategic vision." The room went silent. James actually said, "What?" out loud. I felt like I'd been punched, not just demoted, replaced by the person who'd been stealing credit for my work. "Additionally," Natasha continued, "we're restructuring the compensation model. The commission structure originally proposed for GridSync Pro's development team is being discontinued. Instead, we'll be implementing a flat bonus pool to be distributed based on commercial performance." My commission. The agreement I'd negotiated when I took on this project, promising me 2% of net revenue from GridSync Pro sales. She was canceling it. "You can't unilaterally cancel existing compensation agreements," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Natasha's smile was thin and sharp. "Employment terms are subject to modification based on business needs, Miss Bennett. If you have concerns, I suggest you review your employment contract." This meeting is adjourned. People filed out in uncomfortable silence. James squeezed my shoulder as he passed. "This is illegal. It has to be." I sat in that empty conference room for 20 minutes, my mind racing. Then I walked to my desk, pulled up my employment contract, and started reading. My contract with Pinnacle was 93 pages long. I'd signed it 6 years ago, back when I was just excited to have a senior position at a growing company. I'd read it then, but casually, skimming the dense legal language. Now I read every word. Page 47, Section 10A, buried in the intellectual property provisions. Source reversion rider. The source reversion rider was 3 paragraphs of legal text that I'd completely overlooked when I signed my contract. It had probably been standard boilerplate from Pinnacle's early days, when the company was a startup trying to attract talent with creative incentive structures. The language was dense, but the meaning was crystal clear once I unpacked it. If Pinnacle Technologies terminated, materially altered, or failed to honor commission agreements tied to intellectual property developed by an employee, and if that employee held primary inventor status on said intellectual property, then ownership rights to the commercial application of that intellectual property would revert to the employee, with Pinnacle retaining only a limited license requiring revenue-sharing payments. In plain English, if they canceled my commission on technology I'd invented, they'd automatically lose ownership of that technology. I wouldn't just get my commission back, I'd own GridSync Pro outright, and Pinnacle would have to pay me to use it. The revenue split was spelled out in subsection C, 75% to the inventor, 25% to the company. I read it 5 times to make sure I understood. Then I called Elizabeth Morneau. "Elizabeth, my employment contract has a source reversion rider. Section 10A, are you familiar with it?" Silence. Then, "Oh my God, does it apply to GridSync Pro?" "I think it does. If Natasha canceled my commission and I can prove primary inventor status, you own it. Zara, you own the whole thing. Hold on, I'm pulling up the standard contract templates." I heard keyboard clicking. Elizabeth swore softly. This clause was in Pinnacle's contracts from 2011 to 2016. It was supposed to be removed in the 2015 revision, but you were hired right in the transition period. Some contracts had it, some didn't. Natasha wouldn't know about it, she wasn't here when these were drafted. What do I need to prove for this to trigger? Primary inventor status, which shouldn't be hard given your documentation, and evidence that the commission was canceled or materially altered. Do you have the original commission agreement in writing? Email from Walter Hutchinson, dated March 3rd, 2 years ago. 2% of net revenue on GridSync Pro commercial sales. And the cancellation? just announced verbally in a meeting an hour ago, but there were 20 witnesses. Elizabeth was quiet for a moment. Zara, if you activate this clause, it's going to be nuclear. Pinnacle will lose commercial rights to their flagship product right as it's about to launch. The company could survive it, but Natasha's career here won't. Neither will yours, probably. What happens if I don't activate it? They'll proceed with the demoting you, Kelly will get credit for your work, and the patent fight will probably drag on for years while you watch other people profit from what you built. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. I spent the weekend building my case like a lawyer preparing for trial. Everything had to be airtight, documented, and undeniable. First, the commission agreement. I had Walter's original email, but I also found the meeting notes from the discussion where we'd negotiated terms. I'd looped in HR at the time, proper procedure, so there was a paper trail showing the agreement had been officially processed. Second, evidence of primary inventor status. This was easier than expected. Our development repository tracked every code commit with timestamps and author tags. I pulled reports showing that 87% of GridSync Pro's core codebase had been written by me or under my direct supervision. Design documents bore my name and signature. Progress reports, feasibility studies, technical specifications, I'd authored all of them. I also found the email thread where I'd proposed the project initially, 18 months before Natasha joined the company. Walter had approved it with a note, "Great initiative, Zara, run with it." Third, the patent timeline. Elizabeth provided me with the filing records, which showed Natasha had bypassed normal procedures. More importantly, she sent me the provisional patent application itself. Reading through the claims section, I could identify every component's origin. Claims 1 through 14, my work. Claims 15 through 18, James's database optimization. Claims 19 and 20, Adrian's integration protocols. Not a single claim originated from Kelly or Natasha. Monday morning, I requested a meeting with Walter Hutchinson. His assistant initially tried to schedule it for the following week. "Tell him it's regarding Section 10A of my employment contract and the GridSync Pro commercial rights," I said. "I think he'll want to make time today." The meeting was on his calendar within an hour. 2 p.m., his office. I arrived 5 minutes early with a leather portfolio containing printed documentation, every piece of evidence I'd compiled, organized with tabs and annotations. Old school, but impressive. Walter's office was larger than Natasha's, but less aggressively decorated. Photos of his family mixed with industry awards. A coffee cup bearing the Pinnacle logo sat on a coaster, a real working cup with actual coffee rings. "Zara," he said, standing to shake my hand. His expression was guarded. "Your message was cryptic. What's this about?" I opened the portfolio and slid the first document across his desk. My employment contract, opened to page 47 with Section 10A highlighted. "I need you to read this," I said, "specifically the source reversion rider." Walter read in silence. I watched his expression shift from confusion to concern to what looked like genuine alarm. "When did you sign this contract?" he asked quietly. "October 2015. Right when I was hired as senior systems architect. And Natasha canceled your GridSync Pro commission last Friday? In a meeting with the full team, 20 witnesses. She also demoted me and replaced me with Kelly Hartman." Walter set down the contract and rubbed his eyes. "Walk me through what you think this clause means." "I think it's clear. Pinnacle canceled commission payments tied to intellectual property I developed as primary inventor. According to Section 10A, that triggers a reversion of commercial rights. I own GridSync Pro now. Pinnacle has a license to use it, but you'd owe me 75% of all revenue." "That can't be right. This kind of clause would never—" He stopped himself, pulling out his phone. "I'm calling Elizabeth." The three of us spent the next 90 minutes in Walter's office, going through every piece of documentation. Elizabeth confirmed my interpretation of Section 10A. Walter's face grew increasingly grave as the reality settled in. "How many contracts have this clause?" he finally asked Elizabeth. "I'd need to audit the full database, but based on the date range, probably 15 to 20 employees who were hired during the transition period. Zara might be the only one where it's actually triggered." Walter turned to me. What do you want, Zara? There has to be a way to resolve this without destroying everything we've built. I want 3 things, I said, and I was proud that my voice didn't shake. First, full restoration of my position and commission agreement. Second, correction of the patent application to remove names of people who didn't contribute to the invention. Third, a formal acknowledgement in company records that GridSync Pro was developed under my architectural leadership. And if we can't agree to those terms, then I'll exercise my rights under Section 10A. I'll own GridSync Pro, and Pinnacle will license it from me at the 75% rate. I'll also file complaints with the Patent Office regarding fraudulent inventor claims. Walter was quiet for a long moment. Natasha isn't going to like this. Natasha created this situation, I replied. I just read my contract. Give me 24 hours, Walter said. Don't take any action until we can convene a proper meeting. Elizabeth, I need you to verify every detail of this. If Zara's right, if this clause is enforceable, we need to know before this goes any further. I agreed to the delay. Walking out of Walter's office, I felt simultaneously powerful and terrified. I just threatened to take ownership of a technology that Pinnacle had invested millions in developing and was about to launch commercially. Either they'd back down or I'd be in the legal fight of my life. That night, I barely slept. My phone buzzed at 11 p.m. with an email from Natasha. Meeting scheduled for tomorrow, 9 a.m., executive conference room. Attendance mandatory. The executive conference room was Pinnacle's largest, designed to impress clients and investors. A massive table dominated the space, surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. When I arrived at 8:55, Walter was already there, along with Elizabeth Morneau and 2 people I didn't recognize, a man and woman in expensive suits who had external legal counsel written all over them. Natasha swept in at exactly 9 a.m., flanked by Kelly Hartman and Adrian Voss. She wore another power suit, this one navy, and her expression suggested she'd expected to walk into a meeting where she held all the cards. Her confidence lasted about 30 seconds. "Let's get started," Walter said. "Elizabeth, can you brief everyone on the legal situation?" Elizabeth stood, distributing bound copies of a legal memo she'd prepared overnight. "Yesterday, Miss Bennett brought to my attention a clause in her employment contract, specifically Section 10A, the source reversion rider. After extensive analysis, I've concluded that this clause is enforceable and has been triggered by the recent cancellation of her GridSync Pro commission agreement." Natasha's eyes narrowed. "What clause? I've reviewed all standard employment contracts. There's no such provision." "It was in contracts from 2011 to 2015, Elizabeth explained. "Removed in later versions, but Miss Bennett's contract predates the revision." "And what exactly does this clause do?" Natasha asked, though her tone suggested she was beginning to suspect the answer. I spoke up. "It reverts ownership of intellectual property to the primary inventor if commission agreements tied to that property are terminated or materially altered. Since you canceled my GridSync Pro commission, commercial rights to the technology now belong to me. Pinnacle has a license to use it, but you'd owe me 75% of all revenue." The color drained from Natasha's face. "That's absurd. Company policy clearly states that all inventions developed using company resources belong to the company. Not according to Miss Bennett's specific contract," one of the external lawyers said. His nameplate read Richard Townsend, Senior Partner, Townsend and Associates. "We've reviewed the language extensively. The clause is unusual but enforceable. It essentially creates a conditional assignment of rights that reverts based on specific triggers." Natasha turned to Walter. "You can't seriously be considering this. She's trying to steal company property." "I'm not stealing anything," I said calmly. "I'm exercising rights that were granted in my employment contract. Rights that would never have been triggered if you hadn't canceled my commission and demoted me." Natasha's composure was fracturing. "This is extortion. She's manufactured a technicality to—" "It's not a technicality," Elizabeth interrupted. "It's a binding contractual provision, and Miss Bennett didn't manufacture the situation. You created it by unilaterally altering her compensation agreement." Kelly leaned over to whisper something to Natasha, who waved her off impatiently. "Fine, We'll restore the commission agreement. Problem solved? Richard Townsend shook his head. Once the clause is triggered, restoration of the original terms doesn't automatically reverse the ownership reversion. The contract language is clear on that point. Reversion is permanent upon trigger. Then we'll draft a new agreement, Natasha said. Buy back the rights at fair market value. I'd been waiting for this. I'm open to negotiation, but we need to establish what fair market value means. GridSync Pro is projected to generate between $50 and $80 million in revenue over the next 5 years, according to your own market analysis. If we're talking about buying out 75% of that, $40 to $60 million, Walter said quietly. We don't have that kind of capital available. Then we proceed under the existing license arrangement, I said. Pinnacle continues to market and sell GridSync Pro, and I receive 75% of net revenue as specified in Section 10A, subsection C. Natasha slammed her hand on the table. This is insane. Walter, you can't let her do this. We've invested millions in development costs, marketing preparation, partnership negotiations. Most of those development costs were my salary and my team's time, I pointed out. The actual infrastructure investment was minimal. GridSync Pro is primarily software. Software that was developed on company time using company equipment under company direction. Under my direction, I corrected. I proposed the project. I architected the solution. I led the development team. The Git repository, the design documents, the patent application itself, everything proves that I'm the primary inventor. Kelly didn't contribute to the core technology. Neither did you. Kelly finally spoke up, her voice tight. I provided strategic guidance and theoretical framework optimization. You provided academic terminology in meetings, I said, looking at her directly. I checked the commit history. You've contributed exactly 0 lines of code to GridSync Pro. Your name appears on 17 PowerPoint presentations, all created after the core technology was already functional. Adrian Voss, who'd been silent until now, cleared his throat. For the record, I only worked on integration protocols. I never claimed to be a core inventor. Natasha shot him a look that could have melted steel. Whose side are you on? The truth side, Adrian said quietly. I did limited technical work. My name probably shouldn't be on the patent application either. The meeting continued for another 2 hours. Natasha argued, threatened, and tried every angle to invalidate the source reversion rider. The lawyers shot down each attempt. The clause was enforceable. It had been triggered. GridSync Pro's commercial rights belonged to me. By noon, Walter called for a break. Natasha left the room first, Kelly trailing behind her like a shadow. I stood by the windows, looking out at the city, trying to process what was happening. Walter approached, holding 2 cups of coffee. He offered me one. You knew this was going to happen, he said. It wasn't a question. I knew the clause existed. I knew it had been triggered. I didn't know if you'd actually honor it. Elizabeth says we don't have a choice. Fighting it in court would cost more than just accepting the terms, and we'd probably lose anyway. He took a sip of coffee. I have to ask, what's your end game here? Do you actually want to own GridSync Pro? Because that comes with responsibilities. Support, updates, liability, client relationships. Are you prepared for that? It was a fair question. I want fair recognition for my work. I want the people who actually built this technology to benefit from it, not the people who tried to steal credit. If that means I own it, then yes, I'm prepared. What if I made you a different offer? Walter set down his coffee, turning to face me fully. What if we restructure the entire thing? You become VP of Innovation, reporting directly to me, not to Natasha. Full restoration of your commission, plus equity. You maintain technical control over GridSync Pro and any derivatives. We amend the patent application to accurately reflect true inventors. And we create an incentive structure for your development team that ensures they share in the success. And Natasha, that situation is being addressed separately. Her decision to bypass legal review on the patent application and unilaterally alter compensation agreements violated company policy. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss her continued employment. I considered the offer. What I really wanted wasn't ownership of GridSync Pro. It was acknowledgement of what I'd built and protection from people like Natasha who'd try to take it away. I want those terms in writing, I said, including the reporting structure and technical control, and I want the development team's incentive structure approved by me before implementation. Done. I'll have Elizabeth draft the agreement this afternoon. Anything else? Yes. I want an audit of all patents filed during Natasha's tenure to verify accurate inventor attribution. If she did this with GridSync Pro, she might have done it with other projects. Walter's expression darkened. Agreed. Elizabeth was already planning that, if we find other irregularities. He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. When we reconvened, Walter presented the new terms. Natasha's face went through several shades of red as he outlined my new position and authority. "You're letting her blackmail you," she said, her voice shaking with anger. "This sets a terrible precedent. Employees can't be allowed to." "Miss Prescott," Richard Townsend interrupted, "I strongly advise you to stop talking. Your actions in this matter have exposed Pinnacle to significant legal liability. If Miss Bennett were vindictive, she could file complaints with the Patent Office that would trigger an investigation into fraud. That investigation would focus heavily on your decision-making process." Natasha went silent, finally understanding how badly she'd miscalculated. The formal agreements took 3 days to finalize. I signed them in Elizabeth's office on a Thursday afternoon, my hand cramping from the number of pages requiring initials and signatures. My new title: Vice President of Innovation and Technology Development. My compensation package included a base salary increase of 40%, restored commission on GridSync Pro, and a 3% equity stake in Pinnacle. Most importantly, I had final approval authority over all technical decisions related to GridSync Pro and veto power over patent filings for any technology I developed. The development team was restructured with a profit-sharing pool that gave every contributor a stake in GridSync Pro's success. James Thornton nearly cried when I told him his share would be worth at least 6 figures over the next 3 years. Natasha Prescott resigned on Friday. The official announcement cited pursuit of other opportunities, but the reality was clear to anyone paying attention. Walter offered her the choice between resignation and termination. She chose resignation, probably hoping to salvage her reputation. Kelly Hartman left 2 weeks later. Without Natasha's protection, her lack of actual technical contribution became obvious. She found another position at a consulting firm, where her talent for presentation over substance would probably serve her well. The patent application was withdrawn and refiled with accurate inventor attribution. My name appeared first, followed by James Thornton, Adrian Voss, and 3 other team members who'd made substantial contributions. The Patent Office approved it 11 months later. GridSync Pro launched commercially 4 months after the settlement. The marketing campaign highlighted Pinnacle's innovation, but the technical white papers and industry presentations featured my name and photo. When trade publications wrote about the technology, they interviewed me, not some executive taking credit for work they didn't do. The first-year revenue exceeded projections, $53 million in sales, with a net profit margin of 42%. My commission check was enough to pay off my student loans, buy a house, and fund Rutherford's gourmet cat food habit for the next decade. But the money wasn't the real victory. 6 months after becoming VP, I was invited to speak at the National Energy Innovation Conference in Denver. 5,000 attendees, including executives from every major utility company and technology firm in North America. I stood on that stage in front of an audience that could have filled a small arena, and I told the story of GridSync Pro's development. Not the sanitized corporate version, but the real story. The vampire months. The breakthrough conversation with Tommy Rodriguez. The challenge of teaching computers to predict human chaos. After the presentation, the questions came rapid fire. Technical questions about the architecture, implementation questions about deployment challenges, strategic questions about market expansion. Not a single person asked me to check with someone else before answering. Nobody implied that I was just the spokesperson for the real innovators behind the scenes. They treated me like what I was, the person who'd built something revolutionary and knew every detail of how it worked. In the front row, Walter Hutchinson watched with visible pride. Beside him sat Elizabeth Morno, who'd become not just my attorney but my mentor in navigating corporate politics. And scattered throughout the audience were members of my development team who'd taken vacation days to attend and support me. Tommy Rodriguez was there too. I'd insisted that Pinnacle hire him as a building systems consultant, a position that paid 3 times his custodian salary and involved working with my team to understand real-world usage patterns. His insights had become integral to our product development process. After the presentation, a woman approached me, late 50s, sharp suit, the kind of presence that suggested she was important even before she introduced herself. Dr. Evelyn Marsh, she said, shaking my hand, CEO of TerraGrid Solutions. That was one of the most impressive technical presentations I've seen in 30 years in this industry. Thank you. I'm familiar with TerraGrid. Your distributed energy work is groundbreaking. We'd like to explore a partnership. GridSync Pro's architecture could integrate with our grid management systems in ways that would be revolutionary. Are you the person to talk to about licensing discussions? I am, I said, and the simple truth of that statement felt like winning a second time. We scheduled a meeting. TerraGrid ended up licensing GridSync Pro technology for their smart grid deployment across the Pacific Northwest. That deal alone generated $47 million in revenue over 3 years. Other partnerships followed: research collaborations with universities, joint development projects with companies I'd admired from a distance. Each conversation started the same way. People recognized my name, knew my work, and wanted to talk directly to me about technical possibilities. That was the real victory, not the money, not the title, but the simple acknowledgement that I'd built something valuable and deserved to be recognized for it. Last month, GridSync Pro passed a significant milestone. Installed in over 1,500 buildings across North America, reducing energy consumption by a combined total of 42 million kilowatt-hours annually. In environmental terms, that's equivalent to taking 9,000 cars off the road permanently. Pinnacle Technologies has tripled in size since the GridSync Pro launch. We've hired 170 new employees, opened offices in 3 additional cities, and expanded our product line to include water management systems and integrated building automation. Walter Hutchinson stepped down as CEO last quarter, transitioning to executive chairman. The board approached me about the CEO position. I declined. I'm an engineer at heart, and I'm doing my best work leading innovation rather than managing the full business. Instead, they brought in Diane Wu, former COO of a major tech firm, who has the strategic vision and management expertise to scale the company while respecting the culture we've built. Her first action as CEO was to implement company-wide IP attribution policies, ensuring that what happened with Natasha couldn't happen again. I still hear about Natasha occasionally through industry connections. She landed at a mid-sized firm similar to Pinnacle, brought in to turn around their struggling product division. According to the rumors, she lasted 8 months before transitioning to advisory roles. Some people never learn that you can't build a sustainable career on stolen credit. Kelly Hartman sends me LinkedIn connection requests periodically. I haven't accepted them. My team is working on GridSync Pro's 3rd-generation architecture, incorporating machine learning advances that didn't exist when I built the original version. We're also developing adjacent technologies: water optimization systems, integrated climate control, predictive maintenance for building infrastructure. Each new project follows the same principle that saved GridSync Pro: meticulous documentation, clear attribution, and contracts that protect the people doing the actual work. Tommy Rodriguez now leads our User Experience Research Division, a department that didn't exist before I insisted we needed it. His team works directly with building managers, maintenance staff, and end users to understand how people actually interact with our systems. Their insights drive product development in ways that pure engineering thinking never could. The original development team has grown from 7 people to 43, and every one of them has equity participation in the products they help create. We lose people occasionally to recruiters offering massive salaries, but our retention rate is 92%, unheard of in the tech industry. People ask me sometimes if I regret how things went down with Natasha. If I wish I'd handled it differently, found a less confrontational path? The answer is no. She forced a confrontation by trying to steal credit for work she didn't do and cancel compensation I'd earned. I simply had better ammunition than she expected. Would I have preferred to work in an environment where that fight wasn't necessary? Absolutely. But given the reality of what happened, I'm proud of how I responded. I documented my work, knew my rights, and stood up for the value I'd created. That's not vindictiveness. That's self-respect. The corporate world has an unwritten rule that technical people should be grateful for whatever recognition they receive. That genius engineers should be humble, should accept that business-minded executives will take credit for their innovations, should understand that this is just how things work. That rule is designed to benefit the people who take credit, not the people who do the work. GridSync Pro exists because I spent 18 months solving problems that didn't have existing solutions. It generates tens of millions in revenue because I architected systems that work elegantly and efficiently. And my name is on that technology, my face is in those presentations, my voice is answering technical questions because I fought for that acknowledgement. Not everyone has a source reversion writer in their contract. Not everyone has an Elizabeth Morno in their legal department or a Walter Hutchinson willing to do the right thing. But everyone has the ability to document their work, to build relationships with people who value integrity, to read their contracts carefully, and to know their worth. The system isn't fair by default. It becomes fair when people refuse to accept unfairness. That conference room confrontation 2 years ago, watching Natasha's face drain of color as she realized what she'd done, seeing the CTO scramble through contract language looking for an escape clause, telling her, "You didn't just cut my pay, you forfeited total revenue control." That moment mattered. Not because it was revenge, because it was justice. If you're in a position where someone's trying to take credit for your work, cancel your compensation, or push you aside after you've built something valuable, remember, they're counting on you not to fight back. They're assuming you'll accept it because fighting seems too risky, too confrontational, too hard. Document everything. Know your rights. Build your evidence. And when the moment comes, stand up for what you've created. The people who try to steal credit are betting that you won't. Prove them wrong. Thanks for being part of this community. If stories like Zara's remind you that standing up for yourself isn't just possible but necessary, that subscribe button is still there. And we're still building towards 7,000 people who believe integrity wins in the end. Not always easily, not always quickly, but eventually. The payback office will be here, documenting every time it does.